Hello, my name is Clare Egan. I'm a lecturer in medieval and early modern literature. Today I'm going to talk to you about The Wife of Bath, Prologue and Tale from Geoffrey Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. So Chaucer wrote the Canterbury Tales between 1387 and 1400, leaving the project unfinished at his death in the year 1400. The tales are a collection of stories told by a wide range of fictional characters on an imagined journey, a pilgrimage from London to the shrine of Thomas a Becket in Canterbury Cathedral. The general prologue sets what we call the frame narrative. We are introduced to each of the fictional pilgrims at the start of their journey by the narrator figure called Chaucer, and we do need to think carefully about the difference between the fictional narrator, who is a character in the work, as separate to Chaucer the author. But this fictional narrator joins the group of pilgrims at a London inn called the Tabard. So medieval pilgrimages were not always the kind of pious religious journeys we might assume them to be, with many taking them as a form of a holiday or a break from the norms of daily life. And this side of medieval pilgrimage is certainly evident in the Canterbury Tales, as the general prologue soon relates to us that the host of the Tabard Inn challenges the company to a storytelling competition whilst they undertake their journey to Canterbury. Harry Bailey, the host, says that each pilgrim must tell a tale, and the winning one will be, and I quote here, of best sentence and most solace, meaning one that delights and instructs. That is a tale that's both entertaining and teaches its audience something. The rest of the Canterbury Tales consists of Chaucer the Pilgrim, narrating each of the other pilgrims' tales to us, along with two tales of his own. Automatically then, Chaucer's Canterbury Tales is a story about storytelling, a fictional depiction of a noisy company of men and women from all walks of life. And this is important, I think. It's not just the nobility or the elite. And these characters all jostle for attention, they interrupt each other, and they competitively tell stories for each other's entertainment and learning. Today I want to draw your attention to three things that I think might be helpful when approaching this text. The first of these is a practical matter. So you may not have read much, if any, Middle English before now, and that's fine. I want to bring this up because I know it can seem daunting, but trust me and just give it a go. Get stuck in with it. So I'll start with this. When approaching Middle English, one of the best ways to start is to read a modern English translation alongside. And here I'd recommend Harvard's Geoffrey Chaucer website, where you'll find the full Canterbury Tales in Middle English with interlineated translations and with synopses of each prologue and tale. And this will allow you to read the modern English, but still look at the Middle English alongside it. Then I think it's also important to remember to embrace this interlineated view, not least because it will make you think more carefully as a reader. And that's essentially what part of reading literature at university is. But it will allow you to notice the differences and similarities between Middle English and Modern English, the words that stand out, and the word order of the sentences. This last point is important, I think, because it's one of the more unusual things to us as modern readers about Middle English. This is the word order. And medieval writers often manipulated this for emphasis. So, for example, the opening lines of The Wife of Bath's prologue are as follows. Experience du nun auctorité, wherein this world is richt enough for me, to speak of woe that is in marriage. So the sentiment here is that having experience of marriage is enough to qualify someone to talk about it, even though the world is full of written texts that are more authoritative about the matter. In simple terms, we might rearrange the order of this to foreground the state of intent to talk about woe in marriage, and follow that with what qualifies the wife to talk on the subject. So the word and sentence order can be a big feature that might trip us up when it comes to reading this Middle English. Here, the main tip, if you run into difficulties, is to step back, look at the sentence as a whole. Sometimes reading it aloud helps, and then think why. What does this word order push to the front of my mind that another sentence order might bury? In this case, the word experience is forced down our throats, and it is immediately placed in opposition to authorité, a written authority, a textual written authority, before we've even arrived at the subject of woe and marriage. So Chaucer's poetic word order emphasises what it is that gives somebody the right to talk about their chosen subject, in this case marriage. And this brings me to the second thing I think it's useful to look out for when you're reading The Wife of Bath. Who is speaking and with what authority? In this opening sentence, the wife of Bath categorically states that her vast experience in marriage, she tells us she has been married 5 times, qualifies her to speak about the problems with marital relations and gendered inequalities. She explicitly challenges male and clerical authority that came mostly in the form of written texts about marriage. Now, these tended to associate sexuality with sin and therefore see marriage as a less spiritual life than religious celibacy. The wife pushes back against this to advocate women using their sexuality as a tool for female empowerment. For example, when her husbands drink or cheat on her, she manipulates them right back. She also uses a biblical precedent to associate sex with virtue because, as she says, God bade for us to wax and multiply. The Wife of Bath's prologue, then, could be read as challenging the patriarchy and giving voice to female desire in a debate where male-authored literature had typically claimed ultimate moral authority. The opening lines of her prologue emphasise and authorise the importance of women's voices and their experiences. And she goes on to show her audience that she too can quote from the Bible to support her arguments about woe and marriage. This brings me to the third and last thing I want to draw your attention to today. And this is a note of caution. Never lose sight of Chaucer and the written text in all of this. The Wife of Bath first tells us at length a very personal confessional prologue about her sexual and marital encounters and how best a wife can manipulate marriage for her own ends. She then goes on to tell us a tale about an old lady who uses magic to teach a young knight to achieve marital bliss by giving power to women and thereby gaining an equitable relationship. All this while, it's perhaps easy to believe in the wife as a vivid, humorous and commanding performer. But if we do this, we forget firstly the premise that there is a narrator pilgrim, Chaucer, who is part of this company of pilgrims listening to the wife, and then dutifully reporting back to us as the reader. Secondly, we also forget that both the wife and this pilgrim narrator are fictional creations of a male author, Chaucer, who's writing a text about what qualifies people to tell stories. This set of facts takes us back to the very thing the wife deplores in her opening lines, deriding the autorité, or male-authored texts that tell women how to behave and undermine any knowledge they have by painting them as bawdy caricatures never to be trusted. So Chaucer then, in many ways, has constructed the Wife of Bath as exactly this stereotype, the old bawd who excels at advising other women on how to be wicked wives. We might think then about whether painting the wife as a stereotype of everything that's negatively associated with women in this period is a deliberate authorial strategy that undermines anything the Wife of Bath as a character might challenge about that male-authored tradition of texts or the gendered inequalities of medieval marriage. The Wife of Bath has therefore been referred to not as a person but a fictional construction of male misogynist discourse, a dramatic and important instance of women's silence and suppression. So when we're reading this text, we have to continually look out for who exactly it is that is speaking at any given time. We have to ask what tactics this figure is using to establish their own argument, and ultimately how many other layers of narrative and textual meaning are also in play.